Good evening. Just by way of information, Kim Marshall called me on the way to the church building this evening and said that Sister Wanda, let me just read this to you. She said, I'm going to send you a message. She told me, so here it is. It says, Sister Wanda Brown has been transferred from Forest General to Bedford House in Collins. The address is 602 Arrington Avenue. I'll just get Jessica to put it in the bulletin. Her brother, George Brown, stated Wanda needs items such as gowns, house shoes, toothpaste, mouthwash, deodorant, soap, lotion. It's a list of things. I'll just get Jessica to, maybe we'll just send it out or something like that. But socks, combs, hair oil, shampoo, conditioners, those things, that somebody would need while they're convalescing. She said, for those who would like to participate in bringing Sister Wanda such items, can bring them to the building when you can. Let us know, and we'll pick up at the building and deliver to her brother. Thank you for your prayers and concern. So, Beth Bessler actually messaged me, here you go, Tom, messaged me yesterday or something like that and said that she had been looking after Wanda. She was on her floor, and she got her in her rotation or whatever you want to call it. And so she'd had to spend some time with her. And she said that, while she is on an oral antibiotic, she's got quite a ways to go. So so I'll just get Jessica or somebody to send out that list, and we'll just try to get that stuff over here that Sister Wanda's going to need. And I don't know. If you have any questions, the best person to contact will be Kim, because I don't know how quick you go through some of those things. So, and she said she'll pick them up here and carry them, get them to her brother who carries them up there to Collins, or if I need to run them up there one day, I can do that too. But just need to continue to pray for Sister Wanda. Of course, she's got some serious health challenges still. She's not out of the woodwork yet, but she's getting there. So just continue to pray for her. Ken Brown called me tonight and said that he'd been out working and got kind of down working, and said he was a little too tuckered to make it. He said, I just want you to know I'm all right. I said, oh, okay, Brother Ken. So it's nice when people call you, just to let you know. Makes it easy on you, doesn't it? So we are going to continue our study tonight with what does a great church look like, and talk about our giving. We're going to try to wrap up some of our PowerPoint and some talking about some of those things. And I'll be gone next week. Jessica and us, we're going to take a little trip next week. And so, Brother Jay, you going to be here still next week? Okay. So if Brother Jay's here next week, he'll pick up here, and he's our deacon of the Dollar. So this will be a good one for him to wrap up, and he can talk about some things. I'll try to segue into it for him tonight. But before we begin, let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, if we could. Lord, we just thank you for this day, and thank you for the opportunity to be together, Lord, as your people, and to grow and to learn how to serve and how to, Father, manage our lives better, and how to be people that are about growing and becoming the people that you'd have us to be. We pray, Lord, that you would help us to look to the world and see it as our mission field, Lord, that our lives are what we give back in service for you, Father. And we're just thankful for the fact that we can give our lives. We're thankful that we can give our time. We're thankful that we can give our sweat. We can give our money. We can give everything we've got, Lord, to laboring in this world in order to just spend our time here making a difference, Lord, bringing people to you with us when we get there. We're just thankful, Lord, for so many servants that we have here and so many people that want to grow strong and want to be stronger, Father. And I thank you for that. And I pray that you would just help us to grow, Lord, and help us to change in the ways we need to. We thank you for Jesus. We thank you that he's there waiting on us, Lord, that he's seated at your right hand. And that when he calls us home, Lord, we'll have our place ready. Please help us, Lord, to spend our lives being ready. Bless us now in our studies, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so Great churches have great givers. We started looking at some ways that the Bible, especially the New Testament, settles on the usage of how we should look at the collecting of funds, the money. Then we may begin to look at some of the usage of it tonight, but that'll be a better conversation for Jay to have with you next week. And so we're just going to recap a few of these, and we're going to camp out for a little while in 2 Corinthians. But I want to just recap a few of these, the way that kind of shape our thinking with regards to it. In Philippians 1 and chapter 4 both, Paul calls them a fellowship. This distribution of the funds, this idea that the collection of the funds, the monetary gatherings, was called a fellowship, so a mutual participation. When we think about fellowship, we think about Jeff's crew hooking us up with the grub. But what we're talking about, when the Bible uses the term fellowship, it really means us working together. And so I saw somebody a friend of mine put the other day, he said the church is a battleship, not a cruise ship. Cruise ship, there's a handful of servants serving everybody, and a battleship is everybody's got a place to play, and so it's all hands on deck. So it's a fellowship. In chapter 4, in verse number 10, Paul uses it says it's an opportunity. It's a way that it's an opportunity. Sometimes we look at things, we try to beat ourselves up because we don't feel like we have enough opportunities. How can I serve more? How can I reach somebody with the gospel? Well, here's a direct tie, your pocketbook. That's a direct tie to it. And we'll get into the details of that in a little bit. In Romans 15 and verse 26, he said it's a contribution, something that we all put in together. It's something that we as he uses in 1 Corinthians 16, it's a collection. He uses in 1 Corinthians 16 this idea of them storing every week so that there won't be a hustle and bustle when he comes to get this collection. The idea that you put together into a treasury, into a trust, or whatever cultural term you're going to use, and so that you have this readily available. And that's why he uses this in the continuity of every week, us getting together to do this for. Sometimes we'll say, when we used to have all the people, serving the Lord's Supper before we went to the prepackaged styrofoam Jesus things on Sunday morning, that we would say something like, well, as a matter of convenience, we're going to pray for the collection or something like that. It's not convenient in the sense of like, well, while we're here, let's just go ahead and do it. That's not what it means. Convenience is, we think about it like with a gas station, right? I stop at the gas station to get some gas, and I'm going to run in and get me a sun drop. Well, you can't get a sun drop down here. A Mountain Dew, run in and get me a drink. And that's convenient, right? Well, that's not why we do it. It's a matter of, when we say a matter of convenience, it's because the men are already up here. It's convenient now that we can do the collecting with all of them up here. And so they've served the supper. Now we can pass the plate. And so the collection aspect of it. So, and then 2 Corinthians 8 and verse 4. Now I want to camp out here in 2 Corinthians for just a little while, because by and large, with regards to giving in the epistles, now I looked it up, I think it's 11, somebody check me on this, I think it's 11 of 39 of the parables that Jesus talks about money in. And that might I hear that used sometimes in the sense that we ought to be talking about money X amount of percentage of time because Jesus did. Well, he also talked about food in 18 of those 39 parables. And so does that necessarily mean we should be talking about food all the time? I mean, so we can't use the idea of the verbiage to weight, what we do, right? But certainly, when you look at it in the sense of the collection aspect of it, 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and chapter 9 is probably the most exhaustive look at collecting and what it's for and why we do it and all these different things as you're going to find in the Bible. And that's why he uses 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Let's turn over there now and look at some of these passages together. Any questions, any comments? Anybody got anything you want to say? It's interesting to read or to I really wish, I have thought many times studying with people that I wish I could film this. I wish that I could film this Bible study with people, because some people ask the best questions, and you know that they're grasping really deep concepts when you're studying with them. And we were studying with the Rangers on, I don't know, one night this week. One night this week we were studying together, and Monday, we're studying Monday, and we were studying this idea of unity in the church, and how we can be unified, how we can be together. And before Paul deals with all the problems that the Corinthian church has, he deals with their unity. All the thievery, this old boy's got his father's wife, and all these other issues. He deals with unity before he deals with anything. And what's really a unique thing to read then, and looking at that, is when you watch the evolution from the First Corinthians letter to the Second Corinthians letter. It's almost like he's writing to a completely different church. They just matured so much. I mean, it's a completely different group of people. And so it's a blessing to really think about the fact that, when he writes these things, like there are thieves, there are murder, there are all these homosexuals, sodomites, all these things, and such were some of you in 1 Corinthians 6, that somebody told them is why they quit doing those things. I mean, they would have never known it was wrong unless he told them. Well, they had the spiritual desire to grow to the point that they would leave those things in the shadows. Well, we don't get 3 Corinthians, right? So we're just assume that they kept on this growth trajectory, right? So when Paul writes this letter to them in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, he's writing to a much more mature congregation of the Lord's people. And so what he talks with them here is in 2 Corinthians 8 and verse 1, he says, he uses this idea that we make known to you the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia, that in great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded in the riches of their liberality. So if you ever want to know what Christians are supposed to be liberal in, that's it right there, you're given. For I bear witness that according to their ability, yes, and beyond their ability, they were freely giving, imploring us with much urgency that we would receive the gift and fellowship of the ministering of the saints. And so he uses this term in verse 4 as a gift. Now, these guys, I told you the story last week of the preacher that was, cutting the rug up on the stage with all the money. Did I tell you all that story last week? And let me ask it this way. Is it hard to give a gift and want nothing in return? Is it hard to do that? Why is it not?
If you're giving for the right purpose, if you're giving from the heart, you don't expect return.
So when you think about giving a gift, who do you think about giving gifts to? So anybody? Family, friends? That's the challenge, right? Like, it's real easy for me, for my brother, I love him. Bless his heart. But he's got a terrible habit. I'm glad that I'm 800 miles away from him now, because I can't count the times. Like, the little hitch thing that you put in your truck that extends your bed out? Like, you can buy this little thing that extends in your hitch and it sticks out the back, right? And you can put something real long in the bed of your truck because of that. Well, I remember I had just bought one, and I brought it home, and Zach comes by my house, and he's like, I need to use that. I haven't even seen it since then. I mean, it's in the box, right? I never even saw what color it was when it came out the box. Well, it's gone. Well, it doesn't really bother me when it's my brother. I mean, a little bit it does, right? But especially when I need it and I got to go borrow one from somebody else, or go down the road with rebar and I can hear it sparking, behind me hitting the road because it's so long. But all that said, right, it's really easy for me to make those jumps with my brother. Well, Paul is imploring this church And they're going to use this money, we're going to look at it in a little bit more detail, for the furtherance of it. And these guys are so poor. They're so poor that Paul didn't think that they had the ability to do this, right? He says in verse number 3, I bear witness. I'm telling you, they did not know, according to their ability, yes, and what? Beyond their ability, they were freely willing. So, Paul, he uses this idea of a gift relating to these guys that were just flat poor. Well, really the reason why it didn't really bother me that Zach took my hitch extender thing is because, I can go spend another $100 and buy another one. It's just $100, but if that's all the money I had, it'd be a lot different story if I had that conversation with my brother. And Paul says these guys, they didn't even have the ability to do this. They didn't have the ability to do what they were doing, but they saw it as a gift. And so, Brian. No, I meant to bring a mite. I've got a mite at the house. I meant to bring it. But Brian brings up the idea of the widow's 2 mites. And it's never, let's just make sure this is understood, that it's never how much you give. That's never how much you give. But it's how much you've got left. That's really what it's after. It's how much you have left that's really what God is. Because the widow is praised. He says that her story will be told every time that we tell this account. And why is it? Because she gave what? All. That's right. She gave all that she had. And so Paul uses this idea of the contribution or the collection or our money as a gift. Well, in verses 6 and 7, he says, and not only as we hope for, in verse 5, as we hope for, but they first gave what? What does it say that they gave first? Themselves. All right, if you give yourself, then everything else just kind of follows in line, doesn't it? Because then it's not me giving, we'll hear people say things like, these blessings God has given us, we're going to give back to Him. Well, you're really not giving back to Him. You're just the conduit of what He's given you. That's really all it boils down to. It's if you see it as you are the one that has control of it, and yet you're the steward of it, that'll change it. If you really think that it's yours, then you can feel real good about what you're given. But if you just see yourself as a conduit, you're just a way that it's going to pass through you, then that'll change it. Because if you give yourself first, so that's why he goes on to say, so we urge Titus that as he had begun, so he would also complete this grace in you as well. But as you abound in everything, in faith and speech and knowledge and diligence and your love for us, see that you abound in this grace also. So the Apostle Paul uses it as the term a grace that we can use. Anybody got anything want to add to that? 2 Corinthians chapter 9. This is the one I want to spend a little bit of time on. Because if you go through and you read chapter 8, all this is about the money. Like verse 19 of chapter 8, not only that, but who also chosen by the churches to travel with us with this gift, which was a minister to us by the glory of the Lord, and to show your ready mind. That's why he's got to travel with so many people, because he don't want all of it in one spot. You got a group, you can divide the spoil, the collection amongst them, so that if something were to happen, it's not all gone at one time. And Kobe, when you ever worked at the bank, did you ever have somebody's deposit come up missing? You ever have anybody call you about a deposit coming up missing? What'd you do then? Little thing. Yeah, I remember when I was a teenager, I went with Mama was an office manager, and she had went to back when you had to make the deposit, the little, pull open the little bin, stick your money in and drop it off, and she went to pull open a bin, and there was a one of them little zip bags. You remember the little zip bags you went to the bank with? And the little zip bag was so stuffed full of cash that it actually wouldn't fall down behind the thing. Somebody just stuck it in there and put it up. So Mama grabbed it, and she brought it home and carried it to the bank Monday morning. She was like, hey, I found this. And they said, man, we don't even have a camera over there. I'm glad you brought that thing in. And that's the reason why Paul traveled with companions so that they wouldn't have one money bag with them. Well, 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 through 10. Now, this is what we're talking about here. We hear sometimes these verses read, maybe a little bit out of context, because let's read it with an eye towards understanding that, the blessing of the Bible is that it's written in an immutable fashion, a timeless way. And do you remember, when y'all were in second or third grade, did y'all do the little thing where you plant the bean in your little styrofoam Dixie cup or whatever, solo cup, and you'd put it out the window, and then everybody would wait to see that bean sprout. You go every morning and do that. You remember doing that? I look back at that now and think, like, how many thousands of beans and corn and potatoes and everything that I planted in my lifetime, yet I still remember the excitement of going and looking at that one. And I reckon it was because of all my classmates, too, they were all my cousins anyway, so they were just as part of it as I was, planting all that stuff. But it's just amazing. And you can see this. The Lord, through inspiration, uses these immutable things. We all understand that seed, the more seed, when I planted that little cup with one bean seed in it, how many bean plants, and I don't even remember what kind of bean it was, I just remember the bean. How many beans could I have expected to grow out of that cup? Simple science, right? It's the law of biogenesis and all these things, right, that we understand is explicit. I only expected one bean to grow. Well, 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse number 6, Paul says this, "But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will reap bountifully. So let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound towards you, so that you, having all sufficiency in all things, have an abundance for every good work. As it is written, He has dispersed abroad, He has given to the poor, His righteousness endures forever." In verse 10, "Now He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food, and supply and multiply the seed you have sown, increase the fruits of your righteousness." So what kind of seed is he talking about sowing there? Spiritual seed. So let's take a moment and think about some things. The New Testament is full of warnings about money. Think about the Gospels. How often Jesus talks about the dangers of money? How often does Jesus talk about the rich? I guarantee you, everybody in here can finish this for me. It's easier for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to go where? Who didn't know how to finish that in here? Everybody knows how to finish that one, right? So, why is it that we would not let we do things like making sure that our teenagers they have proper boundaries in place, right? We make sure that their phones, we're going to do one of our things we're going to do on Sunday night is how to parent your children in a digital age. We're going to talk about some of the dangers of those things and how to prevent those things. And why is it that we look at our children and see the dangers of these things in their lives? Why is it that we do that for? Do we think that they're capable of making good decisions? No, we don't, do we? We think that by and large they'll make good decisions, but we want to give them as much help as we can to make sure that we are guarding their hearts against some of these dangerous things that can happen to them. Well, your attitude towards giving is a direct correlation of your faith. I want to say that again. Your attitude in giving is a direct correlation to your faith. And what I mean by that is this. Let's look at 1 Chronicles chapter 29. I want you to see something. In 1 Chronicles chapter 29, David is called a man after God's what? Own heart. Now we looked a few weeks ago in Exodus 35 and 36 how God had given the commandment for building the tabernacle, and He told him, let each man whose heart moved him, and He listed these things that he was going to need. Well, it got to the point in Exodus 36. Do you remember what the craftsman told Moses to tell the people? Remember what he said? Tell them to what? Stop. That's right, Dan. Tell them to stop. Tell them to stop giving. We've got too much. They were building a tabernacle, the place God was going to meet them. At the end of 1 Chronicles, David wants to build. Do you remember what David wants to build? He wanted to build the temple. What did God say? No. Why did He say no for, Brian? Yeah, you got too much blood on your hands, right? You got too much blood on your hands. So David can't build the temple, but what he does tell David, he says, I'll tell you what I will do, David. I'll let you stack up the stuff that we need. I'll let you get all the provisions together, because who's going to build the temple? Solomon. So in 1 Chronicles chapter 1, now remember, this is David, a man after God's own heart. Furthermore, King David said to all the assembly, my son Solomon, whom God alone has chosen, is young and experienced, and the work is great, because the temple is not for man, but for what? For the Lord. Now for the house of my God I prepared with all my might gold for things to be made of gold, silver for things of silver, bronze for things of bronze, iron for things of iron, wood for things of wood, onyx stones, stones to be set, glistening stones of various colors, all kinds of precious stones, marble slabs in abundance. Moreover, because I have set my affection on the house of my God, I have given to the house of God over and above all that I prepared for the holy house, my own special treasure of gold and silver. Somebody get their phone out. Let's do some math. I want you to do this math with me. Somebody get your phone out. David said he gave 3,000 talents of gold. A talent of gold is about 75 pounds. So 75 times 3,000 is how much? 225,000. There's about 12 troy ounces in a pound of gold. It's not 16 ounces. So take 225,000 times 12 and tell me what you come up with. How much? 2.7 million. This afternoon at dinner time, 12 o'clock, the price of gold was trading at $1,792 an ounce. Take that number, 2.7 million, is that right? It sounds right in my head. 2.7 million times 1,792, and tell me the number that you come up with. Huh? You got to turn your thing sideways. $4.8 trillion. That's how much money David had stored up that he gave to the house of God. That's just the gold. Do you get that? That's just the gold. That's not all the other stuff. If you go on to look at it, I think it says 180,000 talents of iron. I mean, man, that's a lot of metal. And so you look at all this stuff that David gives. Why did the children of Israel give so much in Exodus 36 that they said stop? Why do you think they gave so much for? But they had a heart to do it, right? They had a heart to do it. In 1 Chronicles 29, David said, I gave even my special treasury, right? I don't even know what that means, like his nest egg, or I don't know. I mean, for Pete's sake, how much of a nest egg do you need at $4 trillion? I mean, I saw that Bill Gates has cracked, I think he's at the 100 billion mark now or something like that. And he said he's going to give away 90% of his fortune before he dies. You're like, wow, what a philanthropist. You'll have a measly $10 billion left. I don't know how you're going to make it. Like maybe we should have a special collection for Bill Gates, right? I mean, a measly $10 billion. I mean, wow. Tough, right? David gave $4 trillion to the temple. And as a matter of fact, he gave it with the intentions of never being able to build it. He gave it with the intentions of never being able to build it. He just set it aside in store. So now, in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, in verses 6 through 10, Paul is talking about sowing seed. Does anybody remember the context of the story that happens in John chapter 4 with the woman at the well? What's happening with the woman at the well in John chapter 4? Does anybody remember this story? But Jesus meets this woman at the well. And there's this question, this kind of parlay of Q&A between the two. And he says, you need to give me something to drink. You talk to me, a Samaritan. And, well, if you knew who I was, you'd be asking me for something to drink. And, she's kind of working through this thing in her head. I perceive that you're a prophet. All this. So she starts asking him these questions. And she says, I just got a question to ask you. Our fathers say that we worship here in this mountain, but your fathers say that you worship in Jerusalem. And do you remember what Jesus' response is? The hour's coming, and now is here, that the true worshipers of God will worship Him where? So, was there a time that Jerusalem was going to go away? Was there a time that Jerusalem served its purpose? I mean, Jesus in Matthew 23, He tells them, like, you guys think that this temple is so special. There's going to be a time, and some of you standing here aren't going to taste death until it happens, that we're going to raise this thing. It won't be, he uses the term, no stone left unturned, overturned. So Jerusalem was a temporal place because God had intentions that eventually, in John 4, He's going to go on to say, that the fields are white unto what? Harvest. Right? So pray for the laborers. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, he directly ties our faith with our pocketbooks. David could give away $4 trillion. Now, I don't know how much he had left over. I don't know. I know he didn't carry none of it with him. That's for sure. But he had $4 trillion that he gave to the temple, to the building of the house of the Lord. And we, if we really saw our money as just an extension of my service, of what I do, of how I give, what I do for the gospel, what do I do for sowing seed, then it would make all the difference in the world. We wouldn't. Now, I don't say this in the sense that, man, we need to tighten up here at KW. This is not what this is about. That's not why I'm having this conversation. I just want us to think about if we saw our money really as not just something we do on Sunday morning, that we have a place and we'll just let the elders, work it out however they're going to do it, and let Jay work his side of the magic, and then, whatever it happens. But if we really saw it as a direct tie to my faith, that I'm building the temple. I'm building the house of God. Paul told Timothy, if I tarry in coming, that you would know how to behave yourself in the house of God, the pillar and ground of truth. So if we can see our money as a direct tie to our extension of sowing seed, that's why Paul uses this analogy here in 2 Corinthians 9 about sowing sparingly and reaping sparingly. It has nothing to do with your rate of return in the sense of, I'm going to give with something expected in return. I'm going to give money, and I'm going to expect God to bless me in some kind of way, because our funds are a direct correlation. How we use them is a direct correlation to our faith. Does anybody disagree with me on that? Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to that? So maybe next week, we've got to talk about how we use that money to sow seeds. What's a good way to do it? I mean, I hear sometimes churches fussing over the building of a what do they call these? They got a fancy term for a gym. They call them in churches. What do you call it? Yeah, family life centers, right? Or I hear them fussing. We shouldn't use money for those things. Well, maybe there's a time when you do, and maybe there's a time when you don't. I mean, if you're just a big old 800-member church in Nebraska with a pile of money and you just figure we need to do something with it, and let's just build a family life center, maybe that isn't a wise use of your money. But what if you're a church on the south side of Chicago, right? And there's no safe place for kids to be. Is that a wise use of the funds? We have no problems with the fellowship hall, do we? We have no problems with seats and chairs, but when we got us adults a place we can go and hang out. But if it moves outside the building to a gym or to a whatever the case may be, we start thinking, well, I don't know if I'm using the money right. But I got this real nice fellowship hall, But when's the last time you played basketball? Right? You hadn't played basketball in 20. I played basketball a month ago, and I'm still seeing the chiropractor because of that now. But the fact of the matter is that when we don't do those things, it's real easy for us to say, yeah, we shouldn't be doing that. Now, maybe next week we can talk about the wise use of the money, how we use it in a certain way. What is the proper use, and how do we sow seed with it? Because we can certainly use it for a lot of things, and some of them might not be the best way. Have you thought about this? That we'll be probably, Porter. Hey, we got a new baby too, by the way. Jordan and Walker had their baby Monday night, Tom? Is that right? Monday night. So mama's home. Everybody's happy. Jordan, Maddie, Porter, all the other little Rawlings, all these guys, you know what they'll probably never, ever, ever do is write a check to the church. I mean, they'll probably never write a check to the church. I can't remember the last time I gave cash in the collection plate. I mean, I don't know how long ago that was. I mean, you ever seen somebody make change in the collection plate? You ever watched that happen before? I have. I was in Honduras one year, and I watched this little old lady. She had 20 lempiras, $1. Well, it's actually about 89 cents. And I saw her drop that 89 cent worth of money in there and rifle around to try to find something to make change with. And she rifled, and they were kind of like, come on, hurry up. And she just went, fine, and handed it on like, man, you got me. Well, obviously that was vain giving, wasn't it, right? But so we'll talk about next week, Jay, if you could. What is the wise use of, Brian? $4.8 billion. Okay. So anyways, are you sure? I think it's trillion. It was billion? Okay. All right. So anyway, so here we go. Jay will pick us up there next week, and then we'll consider ourselves dismissed. Thank you, guys.